All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Failure Decoded. We have a special guest with us today that Shamsiya is going to introduce for us.
Hello everyone, welcome to the show. So today's special guest is Tareq Hadhad, a Syrian-Canadian entrepreneur, community leader, speaker, activist, advisor, and CEO and founder of Peace by Chocolate. At Failure Decoded, we bring to our audience unique lived experiences of successful entrepreneurs who have failed one too many times. All stories are unique, but sometimes there comes a story that transcends the entrepreneur and becomes a story of a community, a nation, and humanity. Tareq Hadhad's story is one such story. Tareq is the ambassador and champion of the family-run business Peace by Chocolate, a brand echoing the spirit of resilience, grit, perseverance, hope, and determination to thrive and flourish, defying all odds. Peace by Chocolate is committed to working with communities to build sustainable communities and challenge systemic barriers to entrepreneurship. From wanting to be a doctor to now representing Canada at world forums as an entrepreneur, Tareq's journey is all about rebuilding life, and that resonates with millions across the world. So let's get talking to Tareq about all of this and more. Welcome to the show, Tareq Hadhad.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited for the conversation, and what a great introduction. I feel really humbled.
Yeah, Shamsiya is very good at the introduction. She's like a journalist, is what we like to call her now. So before we dive into everything, because I know you have such an incredible story to share with us, could you just briefly tell us a little bit about Peace by Chocolate, since we are a business podcast? So how did you start this business?
Absolutely. So Peace by Chocolate started in 2016 after my family and I came to Canada as refugees from Syria. And it started after the community rallied around us. They welcomed us with open arms, with warm hearts, and they said, you know, you belong here, welcome home. I think Peace by Chocolate is just a message more than a business. It's a cause to celebrate what the world really needs right now of compassion, empathy, and respect for one another's dignity. It is really, I think, a message also to not only to newcomers or to refugees, immigrants, etc. It's a message to Canadians and to all those around the world who look for the sense of resiliency through adversity, the sense of rebuilding and reinvention after losing everything. And I think that's really what matters at Peace by Chocolate. It started because we wanted to prove that we can be adaptable and we can restart again after such a crisis like living in a war and losing everything in a blink of an eye. So that all really started in our home kitchen in Antigonish in Nova Scotia on the east coast of Canada. And that was basically, I think it was more than just selling chocolate at the farmers markets at the beginning. It was a celebration of a second chance in life. And then our family really decided to be employers in town after we were stereotyped. You know, immigrants usually are stereotyped as those who come to the communities to really take jobs. And I think that's really wrong. We wanted to change that narrative towards having a more positive impact and saying, hey, we did not come to Canada to take jobs. We came here to create them. And that's the reality after, that person who came to me when I was sitting at a coffee shop in Antigonish and said, welcome to Canada, Tareq. Why did you come here to take our jobs? And I was shocked. I did not know what to say because it started with that nice compliment, say welcome to Canada. Everyone says that to whoever they see on the streets in Toronto or in small towns. It doesn't really matter. But what really shocked me at the time is that people still had that narrative around immigrants or refugees, having a negative impact as they thought on the economy or society as a whole. And we wanted to prove the opposite. That's why Peace by Chocolate started as a way to give back, I think, to Canada, a way to contribute more than taking away from the community. And that's why we started selling chocolate at farmers markets. Then we grew up from there to explore e-commerce opportunities. And then we started partnering with many organizations across the country, Canadian Mental Health Association, Phoenix Youth Programs, Refugee Hub, Indigenous communities, because we believed in the power of the relationship between newcomers and Indigenous people across the country, which can really be inspiring for generations to come.
Wow. Yeah. So just to deep dive into that phase, what were the first few steps you remember that you and your family had to take to build Peace by Chocolate? The first 3 or 4 steps?
Well, it was all about the ABC, I call it. A is for acknowledging, B is for beginning, C is for contributing. If you take these 3 steps, I think you can start your business in Canada really successfully. And I think we acknowledge that we did not come here empty. We came here with resources. We came here with a set of skills and talents that the war did not kill in us. Like everyone who comes to Canada, they would still have their skills and their talents that the war would not take away from them. And I think that's really what we use to our advantage. So, we acknowledged, and then we asked the community how they can help us. We said, sorry, we did not come here with any money with us at all, as we lost everything in the war in Syria, and there was that checkpoint of the military in Damascus before we left the country. They were asking us, do you guys have anything? I was like, no, we're just going out for a month and coming back. And that's what you had to say to leave the country at the time, to escape the war. So we literally left everything behind, and then we went to Lebanon, and that journey just to come to Canada was, as I mentioned, that second chance. And that's why we asked the community if they could be there for us, and they responded positively. They came to build our first chocolate kitchen outside of our home. That really is basically a 12 by 16 shed outside of our house. At the beginning, that was our chocolate kitchen, and then we built a bigger factory. Right in 2017, in 1 year time, we grew our factory size almost 25 times. So that was really, I think, the biggest success we had in the business was certainly when we found out that our story was told at the United Nations with world leaders like President Barack Obama and Angela Merkel, and many of the G20 leaders sitting in the room listening to the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talking about us and saying, this is what happens when we face, the narrative of anxiety and hatred with kindness. This is what happens when the leadership of the community transcends all the differences that can create conflict. And I think that's really what helped us to restart. And we found that many people actually were helping us before that speech. But after that speech, everything kind of changed. People were looking for positive stories. And you feel like the world is always hungry for the stories in the terms of, right now, it's very easy to sell hatred and very easy to sell intolerance. So, I mean, living in an anxiety and living in a world where we can see our differences as a fuel to much more conflict. We wanted to change that, and that's why we called the company Peace by Chocolate, because we wanted to say that everyone wants peace and everyone loves chocolate. This is the perfect marriage. It's like peace and chocolate. So we couldn't have had a better message to open, I think, the minds and the hearts of Canadians to our company. And that's why people were donating in the beginning, were giving us interest-free loans to buy the first chocolate machine, to make the first chocolate batch, in our basement in the house, and then in the kitchen next to our house, and then to the big factory. Acknowledging, beginning, and then contributing. So when we found out that we were successful in business, we realized that we need to contribute, because businesses right now, they don't exist to maximize the profit of shareholders. Businesses right now in 2022 and beyond, they exist to serve communities. They exist to create value. They exist to create change. And I think right now, I think smaller businesses are understanding this equation much faster than bigger companies. When the big companies right now their main focus is still on growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, and really they just don't think about the value of their business as contributing to the community, so really caring about the causes that matter. Let me give you an example. So we started creating all these partnerships with many organizations since the wildfires that happened in Alberta in 2016 in Fort McMurray. But then, we created many more partnerships with Indigenous communities, as I mentioned. We created many more partnerships with organizations like Refugee Hub to help other refugees. But this year, in 2022, when the war started in Ukraine, I went to my family and I said, we need to do something. We needed to help other refugees, help Ukrainians, help those who are still fleeing their countries, because they did not decide on this war. They did not decide to stay in that conflict. So I just, wanted to make sure that our business is at the forefront of helping other refugees, other people around the planet who are fleeing. And that's why we created something called the Peace for Ukraine Bar. And we fundraised almost $150,000 to the Canadian Red Cross and to many other organizations.
That's amazing. I think your mission is just so incredible. And I really liked what you said too about, essentially keeping the money almost in your community. And that's what you do when you support a small business. And I agree that I think people are losing sight of that. When you support a business, your local coffee shop or your local bakery, they're the type of business that'll support, your cause or your kids' baseball team or something like that. And yeah, I do think just with the world right now and how easy it is to access things from Amazon or Walmart or these big corporations that are kind of nameless and faceless, it's definitely taking away from that. So I do really appreciate what you're doing to draw awareness to that and to support those communities. And you're totally right. You're creating jobs. There's just so many positives that come out of what you're doing. So I really commend you for that. That's incredible.
Absolutely. So it's not been easy, obviously. I mean, you talk of it like it's a cakewalk, creating partnerships and, building your first factory. But what were the real challenges that you faced as an entrepreneur?
I always look at this question in different lens. I always say that challenges are opportunities to grow. It's all about overcoming these I think obstacles during the path to success, which can be, you can take it in two ways. You can either feel that you're stuck, or you can feel that you are at the paramount of an opportunity to grow. Because being stuck is not a setback. Being stuck is an opportunity to grow. And I think this is really how I take it. It's very different than just sitting down and complain and say you cannot do anything. So one of the major challenges, certainly, and one of the major opportunities and one of the major obstacles that we had when we started the business was having the right talent. We had a much smaller pool of talent to choose from. We are in a small town of 5,000 people, and Tignish is right, 2.5 hours away from the nearest urban hub, which is Halifax. It's the HRM. And, getting the materials, getting the ingredients, getting the machinery, getting the labor pool was very tight. And you cannot really start a business. You cannot have a strong team without the right talent on it. So we were lucky because our family had been really successful in finding that right talent throughout many partnerships with the community. We built labor pool with other businesses in the community. But then we found out that there is much more work to be done to overcome the shortage in labor. That was way before the pandemic. And then I remember on Christmas in 2017, we were ready to hire around 50 more employees, but we could not find people at the time. We literally were bringing in, many sports team to do fundraising, and they were doing all of our packaging together in our warehouse. I have many fun photos I was just looking at yesterday of really the fun times that we built with our community. All of these opportunities that we had risen above us. I think that was really a sign that businesses can just have opportunities right within their success line, but I think it's a matter of time until they find the right opportunity to choose from. And I think the challenge that we still have at this point is certainly regarding making sure that our product is still unique, has that remarkable feature into it, but at the same time we want to make sure that peace is accessible and it's affordable. Peace is for everyone. And we cannot just go, right now you find that many companies are sorry, there is inflation on the horizon, there is a recession coming probably next year. There is this, there is that, and then they pass on all of this cost to the consumer. And they were sorry, we cannot take this on our shoulders as businesses because we need to keep our profit line at the same margins, whether it's, 30, 40, 50%. They care about the EBITDA more than they care about, the value of the people. And the people who are working on their team and the consumers who are also people. I think many companies forget that their team members are people and their consumers are people. And I think they forget that this is they should not care about more one type of people than the others. One companies that we were dealing with, one of the companies we were dealing with, we got a meeting with them, and they said something on the call. And they said that we care more about our customers than anything else in our business. And I think that was just the end of the game for our partnership, because when someone says that they care more about their customers than their team members, or the way they do businesses, or what they are contributing to, then they are doing it wrong. And at this point in time, I think focusing more on having a healthy team, well-equipped team to face challenges and to build on opportunities for themselves, their families, and their communities is much more noble. And then the customer will come at the end. The consumer will find out, they will be more than happy to support a business that took care of their employees, that took care of their people, that made sure that the values that govern the organization had been, spread out throughout the whole organization. What happens most of the time is many businesses come at strategic meetings and they write down their vision and mission statement, and it's printed on 2, pages. It's in the drawer of the CEO, and no one knows about it. No one from the team members really know what the vision and the mission of the company is. And that's why I think, everyone at Peace by Chocolate knows the real values of the business. If you bring anyone from the team right now, they would do the podcast and tell you the exact same thing I'm telling you. And it's because really they believe in what I believe in. And it's because, we pass on all of these beliefs into the bloodstream of the business, that really everyone believes that they are contributing and making a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rachel, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's so interesting that you said that, because I was talking to someone else the other day who essentially said the same thing. She's like, oftentimes when businesses fail, it's not because their product is bad or they're not, making enough sales. It comes down to the team. And if you don't have a good company culture, those team members are going to leave. And then once they leave, you can't fulfill your services and products anymore. So the business needs to shut down. So I totally agree. It does have a trickle down effect where if you just treat your team well to begin with, they're going to become advocates for your product too. If you love where you work, you're going to tell everybody, right? So, it's important to build that, good culture from inside from day one. And it seems like you have a very good pulse on what you want that to be, and you're very clear about that. So I think that's great that you
absolutely
values.
Rachel. And I think what's important as well is building that foundation. Start from build a healthy foundation from the bottom up. A lot of people just take that, pyramid and the opposite side, and they really just see that the top of the pyramid. They don't really build that healthy foundation. That's why you find it's really wobbly, that it could really collapse at any point. And you are spot on. I think it's really important to have that strong team. What we found during the pandemic is that it was very difficult to retain team members at the time when many businesses had to shut down. So bringing in new team members and train them was really that most difficult part of recovering during and after the pandemic. But before the pandemic, we still had that challenge of making sure that we give people reasons to believe that this is a job that would, no matter what other people might pay you, they are not going to leave. No, they would tell me, they would come to me and say, well, in town, for example, there's another job for double the hourly wage, that our company could not afford at the time. And now we were able to certainly increase our wages as the time goes by. But at the time, someone would come to me and say, even though many other companies were calling me and saying, come work for us, they said there's nowhere else on the planet probably that can make me as happy and as fulfilled as this company. So I'm not leaving no matter what. And I think that's what matters at this point. In the time when there's so much competition on attracting this talent, you have to give people reasons to make sure that they have that sense of belonging and that they are contributing to a much larger cause, a much larger picture. Because right now, there are more jobs than really that there are people that they are ready to fill these jobs, especially in countries like Canada, right? And that's why there was that announcement to bring in 500,000 new immigrants per year starting in 2024. Because people are, leaving their companies, leaving their organizations because they lost trust and they lost a sense of belief that they are creating any change. And that's, I think, the main challenge that we need to deal with.
Yeah, and when you say that this is the biggest challenge, I completely agree, because when you go online and you try to find trying to start a business, they talk of CSR, corporate social responsibility, and creating eco-conscious businesses or green businesses. But there's hardly anyone that focuses on building sustainable communities and businesses, and there are no frameworks. There's hardly anyone teaching you how to do it. You are focusing so much on that. Now you should just start tutorials, have these social entrepreneurship classes, because I was looking at your website and, I think there is some mentorship program for people who want to, and I was very curious. I wanted to join that and I wanted to create something like that for the communities. We are losing sight of what is important. We are focusing so much on the future, making the world a better place and creating green energy. We are just ignoring that these as you said, the bloodline and the lifeline of the communities, they have to be strengthened. I wish there were more courses, more frameworks, more tutorials, and concrete, references for us to follow. And I'm sure we can learn so much from you. Thank you for putting the spotlight on that.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Yeah, I think you summarized that very beautifully.
We're interested to know, what's it like working with family? What's it like working with family?
It's really interesting, because you have to live, I think, in a different way than if you are working for, or if you're working with somebody that is not your relative or not your family. But the way that the business now is structured is really interesting. So I am the CEO of the company. My dad is the senior production manager. My mother and my sister, they co-manage our location in Antigonish, and my brother as well is a sales associate. So everyone in the business, everyone in the family actually is quite involved in one way or another, and all the little kids are taste testers. So everyone is, quiet.
That's the best job, I think.
That's the best job, yeah, absolutely. So everyone in the family is involved, and I think it's really challenging to always overcome. I think just thinking in the lens of my family, I would say that it's very fascinating to come together every day to make sure that you're spreading not only the business value, but the family values, and you just infuse them together. And I think that's what matters in immigrant communities, because you find that many families lose sight of the reason, of the answer to their why. Why did they take that immigration journey? Why did they have to leave everything behind? Why did they immigrate 8,000 kilometers far away when there's much smaller chance that they will find a sense of their community and their kids are going to speak the same language and they're going to find the same ingredients to make their delicious food, and etc. And I think when we joined together on this mission, it was not meant for a long term in the beginning, because everyone in my family had different experiences. My sister and myself and everyone in the family were just thinking about, how can we live our first year and give back to the community the most that we can, and then everyone can go on with their path in life. And that's what I did. I was doing a Bachelor of Science at St. FX, as I was planning on continuing my medical degree. And then everyone in the family was still, doing their things. But then we realized that, there's a much larger goal for us, which is to celebrate our immigration journey more than anyone else. We wanted to thank this country in different ways. And I think that this is the power when a family can come together, especially in their first 5 years of their immigration journey, is that magic can happen, because you would find that there is a sense of determination, persistence, perseverance, and focus. Everyone is focused, laser focused on the goal. And what's the goal? Is to celebrate our values of passion, enthusiasm, advocacy, contribution, and excellence. Everyone knew that this is why we are here. Everyone believed in what the finish line is. And I think everyone just thought that this could be something that could be an opportunity to rebuild what was lost in Syria. And I think it's fascinating that it took my father probably 11 years in Syria to have the business registered and trademarked. And in Canada, it took us probably 1 month. So, the idea for us to be together had been one of the best decisions that we had made as a family. And I think that's the power, a message to many immigrant families out there. Don't be shy. to celebrate the reasons behind the journey that led you here. I think many immigrants forget and lose sight of really, coming together and celebrate what it means even to speak a different language in a community of 5,000 people. To celebrate Eid and Ramadan in a community that never heard these terms before. To bring in your culture and happy folkloric dances, on the main streets in town. To call your hot chocolate, something fascinating in Arabic with a language that really no one knows what that means. So I think it is really important for immigrant families to understand that there is a sense of pride in the immigration journey. There is a sense of power in the immigration journey. Don't be shy to celebrate it as a whole family. And I think many immigrants, you see them turn entrepreneurs, but then you see that they lose sight after 5 to 10 years. And that's when I think it's the most challenging to keep everything in place.
Wow, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard about a family and a business coming together. That's amazing. That's really something we can, bookmark and keep it as, so that we never forget it 10 years down the line, why we come here. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to remember that. Wow.
So did it
take time for you? I'm so sorry, Rachel. Did it take time for you to align your ideologies with your families, or was it just easy?
Well, you'll never be able to align 100%. There are differences in the way that you think the ultimate goal and where the business should go and where the family should go. But it is enjoyable. It is really enjoyable to sit down and in the sitting room, by the end of the day and say, well, look where we are now. We were featured on The Guardian or the BBC, or we had a movie based on our story, and we had a book, and all of these pieces of documentation that went out into the world, that's going to tell our story forever. Our book had been, selling across not only in Canada, but the world, and people were reading it, and hopefully it's going to be translated in more than one language soon. And that's, I think, what's important. I think making sure that the family at the same time, they understand and they are willing to appreciate the differences more than really finding reasons to break everything down. I think that's the mentality, having the mindset in place to understand that we are on the same boat, that whatever happens to one will happen to another. It's very important. And the reason I think many immigrant families, they lose sight of this is because they get pulled in many directions, and especially in these early years. Well, there's nothing, I think, wrong with going in different directions as a family, especially as we land in a country that is so vast. Canada is the second largest country in the world, and there is a place for everyone to do whatever they want and to be the best version of who they want to be. But I think this has to be a clear communication within family members. Sit down together, build out that strategic plan, even if it's a one page of paper that you want to remember forever, and really know what are the top 5 goals that you as a family want to celebrate within a year, within 5 years, within 10 years. Build that timeline. Take the time to do it. Do not let time pass by without knowing where you're going. And I think many immigrant families, they always set foot in Canada and leave the other one back home. They don't know where they belong. They live by 2 cultures. One day they are Canadians, and the other day it's like, sorry, we don't feel that we are here. We have to think about the way back. This is going to lose the focus, the momentum. Imagine living 50% in one world and 50% in the other. It's very exhausting. That's why it's so important to be fully 100% in the moment and be 100% in the place that you're in.
That's great advice. I think just an entrepreneur in general, to be very clear about your goals, your values, and where you want to be in 5 to 10 years. You're totally right. I think many people think, I'll just do that tomorrow, I'll do that next week, it's not important. And then, 6 months, a year passes, and you're not any further in setting your goals. So that's a fantastic piece of advice. And I have a question for you that I wanted to save till the end, but you brought up the movie, so I want to ask it now. What was it like seeing your life on the big screen? Could you ever imagine that you'd have actors playing, your family members? What was that experience like for you?
Oh, it was actually surreal. I had never imagined that, we are going to wake up one day and just go to movie theaters and find someone pretending to be me and my father and my mother, portraying that they are us on the big screen. It was surreal, and really, I would have never really thought of it. And I think thinking about the movie in a different way is, in the storytelling side, to be strong enough to be willing to share your story with millions of people. But a lot of people don't know that the movie is not a documentary, right? It's a feature film. So 60% of the storyline in the movie, the script, is true, and 40% is drama added to the movie to make it appealing, and tell a bigger story than ours. And that's why, the director would call me in 2018, 19, and he would tell me, Tareq, your story is too positive. Give me conflict. I'm like, sorry, there's no conflict in our story. And he was like, we need to add something to it. And I was like, I really don't know what to do. Like, we did not fight with anyone in the community. No one, no one got us in trouble. So I don't know how we can tell another, story of competition or, the community or within a family. And I think that's where they asked many people in the community, in the Syrian community, immigrant community in general, between Canada and the US, and they came with a new storyline. But the general light feeling to the movie, I think, is being celebrated right now, not only in movie theaters, but also on the planes. Thousands and thousands of feet above the ground. People are watching it when their heads are between the clouds. And they were, just thinking about what could be more fascinating than an immigration story that does not have an end, that is continuing to spread good causes that the world needs now more than ever. And I think that's, something that I'm very proud of, and my family keep just celebrating every single day. My mom loved the person who was playing her role. Yara Sabri is a legendary Syrian actress. Hatem Ali, who played my dad, may he rest in peace. He died in 2020. That was his last acting role. So my dad actually grew up also watching Hatem Ali on TV. Ayam Abu Ammar, who plays me, I've watched his music and everything he's been doing for a while. And it was really rewarding just to see him just portraying that he's me. Although I am taller than him, but but we settled that. He's
good to know.
He's a great actor. He certainly played myself better than me, for sure.
Wow.
So we'd love to ask you a little bit about failure, if you're willing to share. Is there any, failure that you've experienced while building Piece by Chocolate that you think our audience could learn from?
Absolutely, yes. There is, there's a lot. In business, there are peaks and there are valleys. Peaks make you appreciate the next peak, and valleys make you just build up to move on and to prepare yourself on a much larger scale of success. And I think I learned a lot from the early stages. Had more difficulties certainly than now. We are in a stable mode in the company, we're in growth mode. But the startup phase in the business is the difficult, and I think that's when the challenges arise. That's when the lessons arise. That's when failure arise. And I think as the quote goes, we don't lose. We either win or we learn. And probably we did not win all the time, but we learned a lot of the lessons. And I think if we did not start this journey, if we are sitting right now, 7 years after we landed in Canada, and just say, oh, I wish we started, 5 years ago, so we could have learned some lessons to implement today. And that's why we are so proud that we are sitting today with a wealth of knowledge, of lessons that probably we didn't have learned if we did not start. And many entrepreneurs, they have a lot of fears before they start any business. And I think the way to overcome fears is not by just sitting down and complain. That's not going to change anything. It's about digging down and finding solutions and pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone to solve these problems. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers. You have to deal with a lot of delays and challenges. When the pandemic started, within 2 weeks, we shut down our factory for 3 months. And then, opening up again and having to bring the team back and finding a new retention in a new world where e-commerce has grown 300%. We lost a lot for our customers. We had to change our machinery base. We had to distribute the factory in a different way to create the 6 feet apart between stations on packaging, to solve the issues of supply chain disruptions that started in 2021, and it's happening until now, to solve the problems of the seasonality of the business and making sure that the business is sustainable and it is running on ethics of people, planet, and purpose. To create different sets of, growth mode edits and growth mode modifications to the team members to know where the company is headed and let them, and I think communicate a clear message to them about where the business is going. And then we learned throughout many failures, and I think I started writing down some of the reasons of why did we fail. Why did we fail in the early stages in some areas? And then I still, think that a lot of people don't know. Probably it's more common than people think. We fail because we probably assume that our problems are unique. We think that this problem is only for us, while it's really affecting everyone. We fail because we fear the future. We fail because we resist the change. And we fail because we think that, our mistakes are because of us and not because of the outside environment. And I think all these reasons combined can tear businesses down or can build leaders up. There are two ways. Either you're building your leadership throughout that challenge and throughout that problem solving, or you're really tearing your organization down by just assuming that your problems are unique or resisting to change.
Wow. We wanted to start Failure Decoded because there is hardly any information out there as to why people fail. And as you said, people might think it's unique to them,
That's right.
But it's actually not. So if people would share more of their failures, entrepreneurs would feel, okay, not everyone has to go through this, and this is how you can probably solve it.
Yeah.
So thank you for, I would love it if you could share those write-ups if you still have it on your paper or your handkerchief tissue, but that was amazing. But I know you're a good leader, and there's a lot of problem solving that I've already seen and heard you talk about, but what is your specific skill set that helps you navigate these challenging situations and failures?
The number one thing is flexibility. You have to be flexible to deal with any situation that might arise in your organization. And you never know. And, you have to also be people-driven. You have to be goal-driven. You have to be values-driven. And I think when you are that person, then you are building yourself up for success. And not only the CEOs have to be leaders. Everyone on the team has to be a leader. CEOs just happen to be in a position where they got a great idea or they got a great business running, but they need people smarter than them to be on the team. And I think never be afraid to hire those who are smarter than you on the team members. You have to be the least smartest person, on the team. I'm not saying that I am the dumbest on the team. I'm just saying that there is certainly more areas for people to jump in and solve problems. And I think, there are many organizations that they pretend to do things always right, but this is not the true story. You have to be vulnerable a lot of the times, and you have to make sure that people understand your vulnerability and connect to it in many ways. And that's, I think, when the sense of leadership comes, when you are a great communicator as well. You have to be a good listener in the first place. If you are not a good listener, you cannot build anything. Not a small team, not a big team, not an organization. You cannot have that freedom of running an organization based on your values. I think it's really important for leaders also to make sure that they are scanning all the gaps in the organization, and they have that vision of really, I think, coming up with solutions before the problem arises, and being prepared. So being prepared is going to be a lot more valuable than really solving anything after anything happens. In our food industry, for example, there is a lot of challenges to grow a business across borders, to build a food safety system in your manufacturing facility that can allow you to go across borders, to have your GFSI or SQF food safety practices on your facility before you do anything. And I think that's another big challenge that we had to take on in the business that we were not ready for, but then we brought in many team members who were all really smart, really dedicated, well knowledge, into these fields, and they just started helping us moving the needle along. And we are grateful every single day. So I think, the last piece of leadership is gratitude. You have to show gratitude to those who are doing things right. And I think support those who are doing things a little wrong, but I think they're going to get it right eventually.
Do you have one piece of advice for entrepreneurs? Like, what's your best piece of advice? I know you've shared many things, but if there's one thing that an entrepreneur can focus on and try and get right in your mind, what do you think that is?
I think a lot of people, go and talk about passion, go and talk about sustainability, go and talk about these big terms that many people really even don't know what they mean. What does passion mean? What does sustainability mean? What does, create values in the organization mean? Many people really talk about them, but they really don't know the meaning behind them. I think an entrepreneur, number one, if there is one advice I want to tell them, you have to be a good storyteller. And if you're not a good storyteller, you have to go and learn how to be a good storyteller. Because if people are not buying your products because they are great, they are first buying them because you have a good story and because you're doing things different. And if you're not communicating that well, they probably are going to come once, they're going to come twice, but they're not going to come 3 times to buy your products. So I think it is really important for any entrepreneur out there to understand this very well and to learn the techniques to be out there in the world and not be afraid to create some disruption in the industry that they're in. I think, entrepreneurs have to be disruptors or they were not going to find their place. Everything now is very competitive. And I think creating a positive competition within this whole puzzle is so important in a world that is, I think now is focus more on these competitions as a way to bring not only the best value to the surface, but I think to bring those who are affording to pay the most on their PR practices or to pay most, on their advertisements, and those who are willing to communicate even a false narrative into their organization, into the world, to get on shelves and to get their products out there. I think right now, even when you do a Google search right now, the companies who can afford to go advertise, to sponsor their ads are going to show the first results. They're going to push their products first. You cannot compete as a small business. You cannot compete as a startup enterprise with any of these big companies without believing first that you have a way different story than others. Not only do your products are unique, are delicious, are different. If you are in the food business, if you are not only your products are really competing and solving problems for others, but also how you are framing your story and how you are making it relevant really matters.
Go ahead, Shamsiya. I know you're going to ask something.
Yes. I was just like, you talk all of this. Is there someone guiding you? Is your daddy or is your father your mentor? Have you found some mentorship?
Absolutely, yes. Mentorship is really important. And I think especially in the early stages, it's an everyday thing that you really have to find people that they are giving you advice, they are mentoring you, they're giving you the right direction, they are holding you accountable. Because if you are, in the top of the pyramid in an organization, then you're going to find it really difficult about who's going to hold you accountable. Really accountable. You can be accountable to your team, you can be accountable to your goals, you can be accountable to your vision. But who's going to hold you accountable to yourself? And I think that's the role of the mentor. So yes, certainly, there are many people that I cannot thank them enough for always being there, and they have been advising me and mentoring me in terms of the business goals, personal goals, and I think the overall mission and vision for me personally and within the organization.
Wow. Just another follow-up question here. You gave us advice for young entrepreneurs. Would it be a little more different for immigrant entrepreneurs or refugee entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. It is really much more difficult for people who come from away, who have different cultures, different traditions, who come here with different mindsets, skill sets than people who were born in Canada. And that's why I really found out that a lot of people, when they are willing to take the risk of the immigration journey, they become unstoppable. They become unstoppable to learn new things. They become unstoppable to strengthen their skills. They become unstoppable to take on that risk even to become entrepreneurs. But also in Canada, I found, from a friend of mine, she told me, did you know that a lot of immigrants turn entrepreneurs in Canada, not because they really want to take the risk of entrepreneurship, but because of systemic racism and systemic discrimination against their skills. They are not, welcome to be what they wanted to be as an engineer or a pharmacist or a dentist or a doctor or whatever they wanted to do, or to be a lawyer. So the system has been pushing a lot of these talents outside of their skills to create something new. And that's why entrepreneurship becomes that safe haven for people who are willing to jump out of these comfort zones of the places that they were taught in their home countries and create something new and become entrepreneurs. And that's what I really found out just recently. It's like, yeah, let's celebrate entrepreneurship, but also for those people who did not know or did not have the intention to become entrepreneurs. We need to make sure that they are being celebrated in different ways. And we need to fix the system that has been pushing people away from the places where they belong and where they feel they can be more successful and they can feel that they can contribute more. And I believe that immigrant entrepreneurs certainly will have to deal with another set of challenge, which is fighting that systemic discrimination and fighting that systemic racism by having the correct opportunity and the resources that everyone else has, which I think Canada has done an absolutely phenomenal work in that space. For example, any entrepreneur who comes to Canada, even if they are not Canadian citizens, they can apply to grants. They can apply to loans. They can start business accounts in Canadian banks. They can do whatever they want to do, except they have every right to do anything they want to do as Canadian-born citizens or any Canadian citizen out there, except the right to vote in elections. And that's really the beauty of living in Canada. It's like, you are welcome as a new Canadian, except your right to vote is still, being held up. As a permanent resident, you can do anything, except you cannot go to the polls and elect public officials. And I think that's really great for entrepreneurs to find their place and to celebrate where they are.
So you've become a community leader now, and you've spoken, probably dozens and dozens of times around the country. What is your vision for the future? Like, what are you hoping to get from spreading this message and sharing this story and advocating for a change in entrepreneurship, essentially?
Sometimes I feel embarrassed to actually live in a world where my message is needed. Like, why should we go around and tell people about peace? Why this is not the norm? Why should I go around on stages and say, well, this is our business, this is what we do, and this is how we connect our business to the realities and the everyday people around the country? Why we don't understand this? As we wake up every day, why we don't celebrate our peace when we send our kids to school, when we open businesses, when we dream big, when we can become whoever we want to become? Why is that message even needed for me to go around and tell people, sorry, like, we got here because of the war, but we are not leaving this country because now the war is over, because Canada is not like a hotel or a hospital that we leave after we recover. Canada is our home. Syria is my home by birth. Canada is my home by choice. And I, just going around and telling people that this is what our business does, as this is really different than what the norm is right now with big corporations and big enterprises who are not caring so much about values, are not creating the difference, and the only thing they care about is the balance sheets. Balance sheets are lazy. They don't tell you the stories about people. The numbers on these financial statements, they don't tell you anything about who works so hard after 5 p.m. at the office just to get Christmas order outside the door at our company. They don't tell you about, someone on our team had to drive 5 hours to drop off a gift for someone who missed their gift for their birthday. They don't tell you the stories of how many people just traveled around the country to create a new product that can celebrate a new community with Trans-Canada Trail, to connect the trail that is bringing people out in the winter and support their mental health. They don't tell you that. And that's why, I feel like, my vision is hopefully to be in a more normal world where my message is not needed anymore. When we become kind of the norm, when our company, when Peace by Chocolate and many of the affiliates, many of the organizations that they are run based on societies and values become the norm. So I'm hoping, but I really also hope that we can grow the business to become one of the top 5 chocolate companies in the country very soon.
In the world.
Absolutely. Yes, why not?
Why not? And that's one way to look at what you said as to your vision. But I also think you, your family, and Peace by Chocolate is a beacon of hope for all those immigrants and refugees. They can see you and they can say, yes, we can be that. We can also have that. And that's very important to survive.
Absolutely. So every immigrant and every refugee, every newcomer, every person even need that sense of inspiration. And when I arrived here, even before we create our own story, I learned about other people's stories, and I'm still learning because that's how we grow.
So where can people learn more about your business? Is there, can you share your website or where people can learn more about you and your story?
Yeah, absolutely. People can go to peacebychocolate.ca. They can learn all about us. They can read our book that is available right now on all platforms where book can be purchased. And actually, our book became the #1 bestseller on Amazon when it was released in the immigration section in 2020 and actually in 2021. So yeah, actually we had many big news coming out. But also, I really would love people to go and learn about. There is a short documentary on YouTube called Brothers, and that was done it's actually on the Atlantic magazine in the US. But you can find it, actually, it's a 30-minute documentary where they can really learn about the early days of the business and how a brotherhood between my dad and our neighbor, Frank Gallant, had formed that sense of, hope for our family, that yes, we can belong and yes, we can build connections.
Yeah, we'll make sure we link that in the show notes so people can look that up. That sounds great. I'm going to check that out.
Me too. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. Really, it was really inspiring. I'm feeling really excited. I don't know, hyped up or something. So we really appreciate you just being so open and honest about your journey and your challenges. It really does help others. We appreciate your generosity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thanks so much, Shamsiya. I'm very glad that I did not bore you to death. So that is great.
Oh, no. No.